Hey there, and welcome to the Confident Woman Podcast. I'm your host, Rachel Brooks. Join me as I sit down with co-hosts, friends, and carefully curated guests as we talk about all the things that empower you to become your best, most confident self so you can step boldly into who you were created to be, the Confident Woman. Let's go. Welcome back to another episode of the Confident Woman Podcast. Today we have with us Lauren Papanos. Lauren is a highly experienced integrative registered dietitian and the owner of Functional Fueling Nutrition. Lauren is committed to helping patients use food and lifestyle as medicine for management of endocrine conditions and symptoms. In 2016, Lauren established Functional Fueling Nutrition, a virtual nutrition practice that offers lab testing, individualized nutrition, and supplement protocols for patient care. In 2021, Lauren created the brand Strength and Hormones, a podcast, collective membership, and hybrid program for women of all ages to overcome nutrition and lifestyle-related hormone symptoms. So welcome, Lauren.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to talk today.
Yeah, so am I. And I was reading through your bio and I'm like, of course, we have a ton in common and a lot to talk about. And our audience is going to love all the things that we're going to talk about because it really does pertain to everyday life and everyday living. I mean, as a woman, we encounter so much of our hormones, playing how that partakes in our business and our life and everything in between. So I'm curious to know how you got started, kind of in this space and what brought you to, creating all the incredible assets that you have to offer for your clients.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that was part of it, right? And part of it was definitely precipitated by my own experience. And I've always had a love for food as medicine. And, since a young age, I can just remember always looking towards holistic methods that I thought were really fascinating. And so when I was in school studying to become a dietitian, I had the ability to study under a functional medicine practitioner and really learn more about body systems and how everything's integrated. And it just so happened that during that time, through this, I was able to understand that I was actually in my own hormonal chaos and wouldn't have known that unless I was studying this to really understand, these symptoms aren't normal that you're having, right? And so was able to work with my mentors during that time to be able to heal my own self and saw just the lights turn back on in my life, right? And just saw everything that I was dealing with start to really heal and doing it, with just changing a couple of things I was doing through my lifestyle and the way that I was eating. I was already eating really well and exercising and all the things, but was almost too extreme, was almost doing too much in those areas, right? Because I was a college athlete and had this very much all or nothing mentality. And so that really propelled me to continue to integrate and learn more about the field of hormones through the first couple of years of my career. And as I continue to work with really high achieving women through my practice, understood that a lot of other women were experiencing the same thing. And a lot of women also, similarly to me, didn't even know that a lot of their symptoms weren't normal, right? And that was when I really started to focus primarily on hormones. And that's been the last couple of years of my practice has really been specializing in these complex endocrine situations that people are going to their doctors frustrated, not getting any solutions, and really being able to work with women to heal what's going on.
Wow. Yeah. And it's so true because a lot of times when we're trying to figure out what is happening in our lives, we tend to look externally, we go to the doctor, we think it's a thing, but how much of that actually is influenced by what's actually happening inside. And so having that recognition that you had experienced was that light bulb moment, right? And so when you started to, more or less, you became your first client in that sense where you got to learn a lot from you and you realized that you had turned the corner on your own life, that you now can help do that for others as well. And so what was one of the biggest shifts that really started to progress this transformation, this lifestyle change into that direction that you were headed?
Well, I think that the first thing was me understanding that there was a different way of doing things and that I didn't have to necessarily work harder. I needed to work smarter. And that was a common denominator in a lot of the different angles of my life, within my nutrition, within my workouts, within my lifestyle, everyday practices. Within everything, my business, all of it, right, was okay, work smarter, not harder, right? Optimize, like, seek out the best way to do this, not the hardest way to do this, or not the most like grueling way to do this, right? Because I very much grew up in like a blue collar type family where it's like you work hard, you work sun up to sun down, and you're going to be successful in all areas of your life. And kind of unpacking and redesigning what that looked like, right? So I think that was huge for me to be able to make those shifts. And then, I think that overall kind of, what your podcast alludes to, right, is like this feeling of confidence. And I think that with a lot of my clients I work with, we go through symptom screenings and things. And we're like, okay, like on a scale of 1 to 10, where's this symptom? Where would you identify it? But at the end of the day, it's like, yeah, improving symptoms is great, but really, I think what we're really after is this overall feeling of confidence, of like strength in your body, of feeling at your best, feeling at your most optimal. And we all know individually what that is for us. And we know when we're not there that we need to refine that, if that makes sense.
100%. And that's actually, you bring up a really great point. And I think that this is something that even myself, I had to kind of pause and take a moment to reflect on. And I think anyone listening might actually kind of find that they encounter this at different stages of their life too, is that we turn that question and ask ourselves, like, what does success look like, right? So what does that outcome look like for that individual? And so like you had said, you had to take a step back and assess, like, what does that look like for me? If we keep going after the grind of hustle, work from sun up to sun down, how much of that is taxing on our physical body? Like our hormones are in overdrive. We're constantly in this like fight or flight aspect of it. And so when we're working so hard to reach these mile markers of what success, accomplishment, and achievements look like, we're running our bodies ragged, right? So we're feeling like we're running out of that hormonal energy. And so if we're running on like that adrenaline, how taxing it could be on our bodies. Did you find that to be true in your case as well?
Yeah, definitely. And definitely feeling like that was the only way though, right? That you could only keep pushing and pushing and pushing. And, I always tell people, I'm like, you can't outsmart your hormones, right? Because you could think that, well, if I just exercise a little bit more, or if I just work an extra hour, that I'm going to like work myself out of this chaos, or, I'm going to work myself towards this goal that I have. But unfortunately, that's just not how it works. And especially when we're talking about the human body, you can fight a really large uphill battle if you're trying to outsmart your hormones and you're trying to think that you can work harder than them, rather than saying, you know what, I honor you, hormones. I'm going to work on you. I'm going to give you everything that you need, all the resources, the environment that you need to be successful. And I'm going to let you take it from here. And like really trusting that your body is going to be able to do that for you, which it will, but that's the hardest part, is the trust.
Yeah. And I think if you're building or even rebuilding a relationship with yourself, sometimes that self-trust aspect, it needs to be assessed. And you're like, okay, so if I had trusted myself this far, but it got me to where I'm at, where I'm like possibly adrenal fatigue or just overwork, stress, overwhelmed, all that stuff. It's kind of taking that step back and taking that accountability and slowing down to rebuild some of that trust. And I think, that's just from speaking on my behalf, where I really had to kind of collectively pull myself together and say, what is it that we're actually after? And why does that mean so much? And what am I doing that is jeopardizing my physical health and well-being from the external perspective, but what's really going on inside? And so taking that magnifying glass and shining light within allowed me to really step back and ask myself some of those hard questions, right? So, when you say work smarter, not harder, so many of us are just into that grind mode that we don't pick our heads up because we got blinders on, that we forego and neglect different aspects of our lives. And, for me, it was my physical health and well-being. But of course, with that comes your mental, emotional, and spiritual well-being as well. So, and you're seeing that kind of take place in your life, but also in the women that you coach and your clients overall, right? So you're seeing this commonality.
Yeah. And that can be in many different areas, whether that's, I work with a lot of entrepreneurs who are building their business, are very much in this like startup type mode with it, right? Where yes, you do have to work hard. We've all been there at some point where the hours do matter, right? And like the hard work does add up, but there's a better way of doing it sometimes, right? That can honor our own health and spirit better, I think. Or it's women that maybe are trying to accomplish a certain goal within their physical health, or, they're moms and they're trying to be a super mom, right? And do all the things for their children. And so I think that there's a lot of pressure in different areas within being a woman to really be a go-getter and to really work our butts into the ground.
Yeah. And we all know that if we're looking for sustainability, that is not the approach to go.
Totally.
And I think you and I are both on this conversation as we're true testaments to say that is not the way to go. And I would imagine that you kind of hit your crash and burn and had to take that step back and assess. And then that's kind of where you did some of that like inward reflection and rehabilitation to really get not only just your hormones, but your life and your business and everything then started to fall into place, right? Because when we start taking the pieces and addressing them one at a time, we can see what is and is not working. And so you work with your clients based on that, right? Kind of taking that whole holistic approach. Is that correct?
Yeah, I always say that like really my mission and passion is to help women heal so that they can step into like their highest power, right? Because that's really what it is me being able to give you your health back, give you your freedom back within the way that you eat, live, your, symptoms, reduction, those types of things so that you can be that highest version of yourself that you want to be and you can show up as her.
Right. And so what do you find with many of the women that you work with? What is kind of a common area that maybe somebody listening is like, oh, I didn't even realize that, or maybe I'm in that season right now. What would be something that's kind of a common theme that you see amongst these women that are leading to that burnout? Obviously, we're high function, high achieving, but yet we can only go so far.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that I always like to use a cup of water as an example of, your stressors, and our body doesn't really know the difference between something being a physical stress, a, biological stress, an emotional stress, and they're all like liquids going into the cup of water, right? And so it's really this delicate dance between all of those liquids to make sure that the cup of water doesn't overflow. Or if we have too much of that liquid in there, then the cup overflows and then our health, that's when things start to tank, right? Mm-hmm. So a lot of women I work with, maybe they are trying to achieve health, or maybe they have a physical goal, like they're trying to, clear their skin, or they're trying to get down to X weight, or they're trying to, really understand why there's like dysfunction in their body going on. And so when they go to their doctor, maybe their doctor says, oh, well, you just need to eat less, move more, or, you just need to clean up your diet further and these things will correct, or you just need to get on X medication and that's going to take care of everything. But then those solutions don't work. And so then they're frustrated. And so then they just keep making more and more concessions to be able to get there. So maybe that looks like a woman I work with that has an endocrine condition such as like PCOS, polycystic ovarian syndrome. And because of that, there's a metabolic component. And so she has more difficulty with being able to lose weight, being able to keep her skin clear, being able to support healthy hair. And so when she goes to the doctor says, oh, you just need to, work out harder and you just need to eat cleaner. And so then she starts, counting calories, and she's like eating so little, and she's working out for hours every single day, and she's not sleeping because of it, because she's also trying to be successful within her career. And ultimately nothing happens except for her hormone dysfunction gets even worse. Right. And so it's like, okay, well, that's not the solution. That's not working with our body, right? That's not working with our hormones. And so when I'm working with someone, I'm really trying to help them identify, like, these are the places of imbalance that are going on in the body. We need to get the environment, which is like the dysfunction in the body, into a more balanced place, because if we can improve the environment, then we don't have to work as hard within the, how much you're eating or the crazy amount of hours that you're spending working out and, these sacrifices that you're making. Like, you can find a semblance of balance further within your daily life.
Yeah. And I'm thinking out of how with going to the doctor and getting that advice. And if you're already a high achieving individual, you are just a go-getter. Like, you're just like, okay, I'm going to take this advice or this solution or whatever that is and run with it. And so it's almost like adding, I can't even think of the analogy or whatever, but the comparison is like, you're, like you said, making it worse because you're swinging the pendulum so far to the opposite direction where you're just like, okay, I got to do more. I got to do more. I got to do more. And like you said, it's actually exacerbating the conditions that are already happening inside. So it's almost swinging the pendulum so that it creates that gray area, which is that balance and moderation. So that's where they can start finding what is and is not working. That's where there's some of that healing in that aspect, because when we're slowing down, we're addressing, and we're not, one way or the other of the extremes. That's where there's so much brought to light, right? It's in that middle. And I think when this, we call it like that messy middle, which is where all the happenings are happening, but yet that's where the best and most reserved work is done right there. Because then when we can be in the middle, we know what to take with us to the, I wouldn't say far left or far right, but it's about slowing that pendulum swing so we don't find ourselves in one extreme or the other. And I mean, you make a great point there, because I'm sitting there thinking how much that was me. And so my book, Chasing Perfection, it was all extremes.
Yeah.
And I didn't even know anything about hormones in that capacity when I found myself just reaching that burnout, that phase of how do people sustain this? And I realized you can't. But when you're in that moment, you just think sustainability, that's like slowing down, and you just need to go harder and faster. And that's where your body starts, showing all the red warning signs. Listen, if you're not paying attention from all the little signals and cues, we're going to start shutting down. We're going to start acting up. And so if you're finding that with your body, that's where you start to, you got to make that connection. Okay, something's not in alignment. And so even in your own journey, what were some of the biggest takeaways then when the pieces started to click and you're starting to see some progress? Where, in what area of your life was that wow, this is monumental. This is incredible. I need to really run with this because it's working, and I need to help others do the same. Is there any one area or areas?
I think that there was a couple of different things that I can really pinpoint. And one of them is a common question that I get by people that I think I had at this point too, is what can you teach me that I don't already know? Because I already live such a healthy lifestyle. I already eat organic and healthy foods, and I exercise, and I do all these things. So how is this going to be any different than what I already do? Right. And what I always tell people, that it's not about the specific foods. I'm not introducing you to a new type of broccoli. I did not engineer a new type of broccoli. Right. I don't have those capabilities, but there's a couple of things that are happening that really are where the magic all falls together. And that's one is the organization of things, right? So it's the way that you organize all of the different components within your lifestyle, all of your different stressors. And I think the organization of things is huge. And that was one of the things that was a big aha moment for me. And I also think that the second thing is in really being able to change the environment. So, we can't expect that if we just put, 2 cups of broccoli into our gut instead of 1 cup, that all of a sudden magically our constipation is going to be healed for life. It's too simplistic of a thought pattern, right? It's okay, if there's constipation happening within the digestive system, we have to figure out what in the environment is causing this constipation to happen so regularly, and fix that through lifestyle and food. And then from there, you can put 1 cup of broccoli and you can put 3 cups of broccoli in, you're going to be fine, because the health of your gut is working a lot better, right? So for me, that was the biggest thing, was instead of looking at everything as input equals output, it was more of looking at it as okay, how can I spend this chunk of time to really heal the environment of what's going on within my body's internal functioning? And then from there, reorganize these different elements within my lifestyle. And once I did X and then Y, right, then the outcome changed. And that was when really the magic started to happen.
Yeah. And it's so true, because we have to take that accountability. And, with your clients and anyone who's listening is maybe I don't even know, I don't know where to begin. I don't even know what's wrong. I just feel run down, tired, weak. I just, you feel the symptoms, but yet you can't pinpoint. And so what are some of the common things that are coming up for women that maybe you can share with our audience, that they're oh my goodness, that's what that is. Maybe they don't even realize what's happening.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, there's so many different areas, but I think that the most common that they show up as is feeling like things are really hard. So it's hard to get up in the morning, right? You're just exhausted. It's hard to get through a work day. You hit like an afternoon energy slump, right? It's hard to go to the bathroom. Things are irregular within maybe your menstrual cycle, or maybe you have really bad PMS and your periods are really hard, right? Or your skin, like you're doing all the things topically that, you should be doing, but it's really hard for you to sustain clear skin. It's really hard for you to be able to have any flexibility within the way that you eat without feeling like your weight's just going to, go onto the other end of the spectrum, or, you feel like you have to always be exercising at a certain quantity in order for you to be able to manage your current weight, right? I think I just think of all of it as like everything's way harder than it should have to be. And you're just working so hard against your body rather than us looking at, okay, like how can we really identify why is everything so hard? Like what are the environments within the body that are causing things to not be received as well, and heal that so that things can become a lot easier for you and you can have a lot more freedom and flexibility and still be able to have this optimal health that you seek.
Right. And it's almost like we're trying to swim upstream at a faster pace when we're running out of the gas to even keep it going. And so sometimes it's just the little bit of like surrendering in that aspect where it's like you float with the stream, with the current, but in that current is where your body's actually doing the work. So you're technically like fighting against it when your body knows what to do. And I mean, I would imagine, and I hear this from a lot of the women too, is like, we run on like coffee. It's like, I'm tired. So grab another cup of coffee, grab another energy drink, grab another. And it's like, how much more damage is that doing to your hormones in that moment than, actually taking some time and hydrating? Because I know if you're just grabbing for another cup of coffee, obviously that's going to lead to constipation. Grabbing another cup of coffee, it leads to also bloating because you need fuel, you need water, you need to move things through your body. And so sometimes we just go through those motions that we don't stop to ask ourselves those questions. And so I would imagine that you see a lot of women in your courses and programs and all that you work with. And there's kind of, sometimes it's just the most simplest things, like replace that coffee with a giant glass of water, something like that. And sometimes when those things click, it's the little shifts that start building up to those bigger changes in the life. And so you have this, you create the system for these women. So it's not just about, a swap for coffee versus water or whatever, but you go in depth and really teach your ladies how to really pay attention, how to refine, how to identify, and how to recover through that healing process, correct?
Yeah. So, typically when I'm working with someone at one-on-one, the first step is for us to do testing to be able to identify where is there dysfunction going on in the environment. Like, why are things so hard? Why is the body not working as optimally as it should be? And then from there, being able to use nutrition, lifestyle to be able to elicit healing, and then being able to create a really sustainable longevity plan of, okay, how to be at your most confident, your healthiest self, right? And maintain that and not do it in such a hard way. But yes, along that journey, definitely those conversations are coming up with like, okay, what are you doing here? Why are we, feeling fatigue? And then we're replacing it with a cup of coffee. Well, anyone would do that. You got to get through the workday. You've got to show up in life, for whatever responsibilities you have. So it makes sense as to why, we're looking for these Band-Aid solutions. But as you alluded to, those Band-Aid solutions typically only exacerbate the situation even further, rather than us taking a step back and saying like, I feel like I should feel pretty energized every day. Like, why am I not? Like, I'm doing all the things, I'm sleeping, I'm, eating regularly, like I'm doing all these things. So why is this going on? And then us being able to really get those answers.
Yeah. And it's so true. Like when we have to take that personal accountability, right? Because we can't just expect a solution that we're masking the symptoms and we're expecting a solution to undo what years worth of, not taking care of our body in a conducive way has done. So what are some typical wins that your clients come to you with and just to celebrate? So anyone listening is like, okay, So that's what's possible. Like now I've identified something that I didn't even know I was sabotaging myself in that sense. But yet now, if I make those changes, what could be possible? So what are your ladies saying? Like, I always love like these, like, not necessarily like success stories, because success is defined to each individual, but like when their life just opens up and you see that magic and you're like, oh my goodness, that was there the whole time. And sometimes you don't see it because we're so close to it.
Yeah, totally. I mean, it spans so far and wide, and it can definitely be based off of what they come to me with. But, everything from, a woman, as I mentioned, that has, PCOS or hypothyroidism, an endocrine related condition, and they come to me and they're just doing all the things to try to, like I said, clear their skin and make their gut feel good so they can like travel and eat out and not feel like they, can't be present with friends, or, having irregular periods and not being able to be able to control fertility, or, having difficulties being able to manage their weight and feeling like no matter what they do, their weight's just kind of stuck, right? And then us being able to fix the hormonal dysfunction and what's causing this. And, like I have one client who I've been working with for like over a year, and she's lost like 50 pounds with us working together. And she's like, I've literally tried everything for the last 10 years and nothing's worked. And, her skin's clear and she's like showing up in her business in much greater ways, like booking all these photo shoots and like doing like rebranding and all these kinds of things because she feels confident in herself now, right? And so it's like giving her that feeling of confidence back in her life and doing it in a way that's really sustainable, where like she can travel, she can spend time with friends and all those things that she wants to do. But then it also could be, like I got an email a couple weeks ago from a client who, we worked together and she was having infertility issues. And, she was like, she sent me an email, was like, I know that if I wouldn't have worked with you, that this pregnancy that I currently have, she's like, I just made it the second trimester, that would not have been possible, and like, because we got her body into such a healthy place to where that was possible. But it could be things from like little messages I get from clients where they're like, I just went and looked at Christmas lights for 5 hours with my kids, and I would have never been able to do that before because I would have been so tired. Or like I've had a client before who she like started a new business when we worked together, because she's like, I finally have energy to be able to do that and like want to do things outside of just like my traditional 9 to 5. Right. So it's really just, like I said, it's helping you step into your highest potential and, honoring what they want to be, like, who is that person they want to become? How can I help guide you and be that support to be able to heal why we can't get there? And so that can open up in your life for you.
Yes. And it's so, when you're able to make those small changes and the big things start opening up, and you had mentioned so many things like, obviously confidence, there's some vibrancy, there's joy, there's happiness, there's freedom, right? So I think, when we feel like we become like a slave to our grind, because we don't know what we're grinding against. And so having that insight and that awareness, and obviously the support that, coming from you, from your ladies in your community, and knowing that you have this place to fall back on, and having that, the relationships that you're building with these clients. And it's like, that creates a sustainability that gives these women back their freedom and their life. And, I think ultimately that's what it comes down to, because what else are we grinding so hard for at the cost of an expense of our own health and well-being? Because I think ultimately that's what we're after, is that freedom, right? We want to have that freedom so that we can enjoy life with our family, our friends, our kids, and be around for the long haul, versus feeling like every day is Groundhog's Day. Like, yeah, it becomes sad and depressing. And it's like, I love what you're doing, because you're bringing people to light. You're giving them the tools. You're showing them ways that, sustainability is built upon. And me personally, I don't think that there was really enough talk about hormones and really about the sustainability to create that healthy lifestyle. Because like you had said, there's so much talk about diet and food, but yet that can only get you so far, because if you're not eating the right foods and your diet is nil, like at most women, we jump on these next diet plans that we don't know how much damage we're doing. And so it's kind of like we have to undo the damage to heal, to begin again. And sometimes it starts with getting clear on our hormones and the habits and routines that are getting us to where we're depleted, right?
Totally. And I think that's exactly it. It's that a lot of people are chasing like a 30-day fix, or they're chasing like a short term. And all that does is really impact things hormonally for the long run. And once things become dismantled hormonally, it's a lot harder to get things back in their groove. It's a lot more work, right? And so you always have to ask yourself that question is like, what's the potential ramification of this? And I know a lot of women that have learned that in a very hard way. I know that I learned that in a hard way, right? Of like chasing perfection or chasing a certain goal, but doing that at the, but doing that while also dismantling the rest of your long-term health.
Yeah. And it's almost like you chase success at the cost of what? Your health.
Yeah, so totally.
What's the win? You achieve the goal or the thing, and you're not going to be able to enjoy it. Right. And it's like, that was something I definitely had to encounter and, come face to face with myself in the mirror and be like, what are you chasing? And I'm like, good question. I don't know. Thanks for putting that speed bump, because sometimes I didn't even know what I was chasing because we drive so hard.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, it's something that, obviously I can share from my own experience, but it's like how much of this conversation really lands with me, but also from so many of the women that I have worked with in throughout my years, and of course, women in our community as well. And so when we start opening up about these things, some women, I guess, I don't know if this is just maybe like the age or something like that, but we didn't really have information and education about hormones. It was kind of not really talked about. And so even now I'm learning so much just from my own experience and learning from ladies like you. And, it's just an incredible experience when you get to bring this knowledge of power and transform the sustainability and the long term of our lives from the inside out. And so that's the beautiful gift that you get to give yourself, is to begin again. And even though life is a school of hard knocks and we have so many lessons that, oh my goodness, we wish that we never had to encounter, but yet that's life, right? So without these hard lessons, we wouldn't be where we're at today, to know that we can give back and empower the next woman so that they don't have to go through the long haul of what we had to do, but also not looking for ways to shortcut things, because we know how shortcuts land. They don't stick. Yeah.
Yeah. And they're not usually aligned, with like the long-term vision. And yeah, like you said, it's identifying like what is success and what's like actual like lifelong success for you. Because I think if most people really ask themselves that, they would say, success is like being present for my family, my friends, and like, showing up as this person who's like in the moment, that's present. Right. And I think that if we're so focused on, restriction within our lifestyle, that it's really hard to be present and to be that, that we want to be. But that's what I really love teaching women, is like how freaking cool the female body is. And like, we go through so many different phases as a woman that, it can feel kind of complicated, or it can feel overwhelming. I totally get that. And my goal is to simplify it and make it feel fun and make it feel empowering, because I just want women to understand like how truly awesome your body is, and all the things that are happening underneath that you don't even know are going on as you're like sitting here listening to this, right? And if you can really understand that and honor it, even to a slight degree, your body is going to work with you. It's going to love you so much more.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, you're doing amazing work just helping women to at least, get to that point. And, your work is so needed. And I just want to thank you for that, because I needed it back then. And you never know who's in need, or actually sometimes you might learn all this stuff and sometimes you just need a reminder. But to know that we can have these open, honest conversations about things that are happening internally. And it's like, it's never about getting the thing externally, like the achievement or even getting that perfect body, because what good is it if inside is not, properly managed and cared for?
Absolutely.
Yes. Well, this has been incredible. And of course, I want all my listeners to go follow you and learn from you and do all the things, because this is sometimes you don't know what you don't know. And having these conversations brings that awareness. And that's kind of, with the questions, some of them are like, but that's so like obvious. It is, until sometimes it's a miss. So how can our listeners learn more about you and follow along on your own healing journey as well? Because I imagine you continue doing the work, because the work is never done.
Yeah, I think it's every day is asking yourself, like, how do I want to feel, and making decisions that align with feeling your absolute best. And I know that that's how I try to live my life. And, of course, we're humans and we're not going to be perfect at that. But I try to show that, right? And show you what that looks like and what that feels like for me. But yeah, my practice is called Functional Feeling Nutrition. Our website's functionalfeeling.com. And there is everything about my one-on-one work that I do with women. That's really the deep investigative work for someone who's feeling very frustrated, who just doesn't know where to go from here, has kind of tried it all at that point and is really looking for answers to what's going on internally and for a long-term solution. And so that's the one-on-one work that I do. I also have a brand called Strength and Hormones, and that is a, really comprehensive collective where we've got like a monthly group membership for women that are really looking to understand their hormones better in a comprehensive way. It's full of education, community. We've got nutrition, workouts that are all included with that. And then I also have a podcast called the Strength and Hormones podcast. And, that's on all major podcast platforms. But all of that you can find through my website, Functional Feeling, or I'm over on Instagram, pretty active there at Nutrition with Lo.
Wow. Yes. And so, of course, all of that will be in the show notes below. So be sure to check that out. And, just anyone listening who's like, well, maybe I'm not really sure what's going on. What is one piece of advice that you can give somebody who's maybe at that point where they're kind of not sure what direction to turn? I mean, did they go to their doctor? Did they slow down? Do they put the coffee down? Or do they contact you? Like, what is something like, maybe a tip or two that you can give our listeners now, that if they're finding themselves at the kind of the point, right, the pivot where like, where do I go? What would you tell them?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and a loaded one for sure, because it always depends, right? It always depends. I believe in medicine, and I believe it saves lives. And so I always think that, starting with, asking the questions, making sure that everything is, good under the hood, that there's, no big red flags that are going on by going to your doctor is always a great place to start. But if you're looking to really be able to fix things with lifestyle and, fix things with nutrition, really optimize your health, then they typically aren't going to be able to support that, just because, their tool is medicine, right? And so that's if there's a disease state, of course. So, at that point, that's really where when individuals kind of come to me, and that's where, I'm helping them learn how to eat, supplement, exercise, lifestyle practices for their specific condition to be able to alleviate some of the symptoms that they're experiencing because of that. So I think that's always a great place to start, though. And, education is always an excellent tool. And I always think that we can always be more educated on our bodies because our bodies are extremely complex. And so, if like even just me talking about the menstrual cycle, if you're like, oh, I didn't even know that, there was 4 phases of the menstrual cycle, or that like I should be having a period every month, or that when I hit menopause that I should be eating differently because of the hormonal changes, like those are some places to start, is really just being able to educate yourself on, what's going on. And I share a lot of that over on my podcast and social media, just to really help women be able to understand their bodies and really be able to identify like, okay, what is normal versus when should I start to ask those bigger questions of like, is there something going on internally that I need to work within?
Yes. Oh my goodness. There's so many takeaways from today's conversation. And I hope those listening really take a moment to pause and ask yourself, like, is the life that you're chasing after really worth the cost of your health and well-being if you're finding yourself in that situation? And the only reason I propose that is because we all go through these different seasons. We kind of feel like, okay, I'm feeling run down. I'm beaten down. Is it the weather? Is it the seasons? Is it the time of, my age or whatever these women are going through? And it's, sometimes we just have to take that moment to take accountability and take inventory of what's happening inside. So I just want to thank you again for today's conversation. This has been really insightful, and, the work that you do is so needed. So thank you so much. Of course, everything's in the show notes below. So we will definitely be following along with you. And I just want to thank you again.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Hey there, thank you so much for joining me on today's episode of the Confident Woman Podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode as much as I did, please be sure to like, subscribe, and leave us a review. Thanks again for listening.